We're back on the Sports Zone. I am Mike Aglialoro. We're going to continue Sports Zone series, going division by division, looking at the teams of the NFL, seeing their improvements made thus far through the offseason, and the needs that they still have to fill heading into the 2014 NFL Draft. And today, we are going to turn to the AFC South. Now, this is a division going through quite a degree of turnover outside of last year's division champion, the Indianapolis Colts. You have two teams with head coaches entering their first season at the helm in the Houston Texans, Bill O'Brien, and the Tennessee Titans, Ken Whisenhunt. And you have the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach Gus Bradley entering his second season as head coach. And we'll start with the Jaguars, who, in my opinion, have made the most improvements out of any team in this division. And you definitely see the influence of Gus Bradley, who was the former defensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks. And this year, he got to bring two of his former players on board with the defensive ends Red Bryant and Chris Clemens after they were both cut by the Seahawks. And then he goes out and he adds Zane Beadles, offensive guard from the Denver Broncos, and he adds the veteran defensive end Ziggy Hood. He also adds Toby Gerhart at running back after their only major loss, which was letting go Maurice Jones-Drew, the top rusher in the history of the Jaguars franchise. And they also traded away former first-round draft pick Blaine Gabbert for a draft pick, and they re-signed Chad Henne to play at quarterback. He is going to be their starter at least right now. And they did re-sign the defensive end Jason Babin. Now, as far as what they have to do in the NFL draft, they do have one of the top 5 draft picks. They're either going to be looking at a quarterback that Henne can kind of mentor. The idea would be Henne would be starting right off the bat. And whoever they draft, whether it's in the first or the second round, would probably take over later in the season if Henne struggles. But the main thing they need more weapons for whoever is going to take over as their quarterback, whether it's Henne or a rookie. They need one or two more offensive linemen. They made the play for Cleveland Browns restricted free agent center Alex Mack, only to see the Browns match the offer sheet. They need at least one or two offensive linemen to protect the quarterback. They need another option at running back to pair with Toby Gerhart, and they need a number 1 wide receiver. Justin Blackmon is still suspended indefinitely, and while they have a decent crop of wide receivers with Cecil Shorts III, Ace Sanders, and Mike Brown, they need a playmaker for whoever is going to be their quarterback. And on the defensive side, they've done a great job stockpiling defensive ends. They need something for the inside, the defensive tackle position, and they could use one or two more players in their secondary to fortify that unit as a whole. Next, we're going to move to the Tennessee Titans. The Titans bring in Ken Whisenhunt as their head coach after he was offensive coordinator of the San Diego Chargers for a season and basically helped bring them back to the postseason. This season, they've lost Pro Bowl cornerback Alteron Werner, and they lost their former All-Pro running back Chris Johnson. They let him go, and he signed with the Jets, and they also cut ties with Kenny Britt, another former first-round pick. In terms of what Whisenhunt brought in, he added the diminutive runner Dexter McCluster. He is very much in the mold of the Percy Harvin, Tavon Austin, or more realistically, a Danny Woodhead type, and Whisenhunt was able to bring a lot out of Woodhead last year, and he looks to use McCluster the same way. They added Michael Orr at offensive tackle from the Baltimore Ravens, and then he went to work on the defense. He brought in Al Woods and Sean Phillips, defensive ends formerly of the Steelers and the Broncos, and he added Wesley Woodward, also formerly of the Broncos, at linebacker. In terms of what they need to address in the draft, they're going to need a number 1 wide receiver or another tight end. They have a pretty good crop of young wide receivers, just like the Jaguars. They have Kendall Wright, who looks like he could be a top 30 wide receiver in this league. As far as whether or not he's able to take that step to be a true number 1, I think taking another wide receiver in the draft could really help him out, at least until he's ready to ascend to the number 1 spot. They also need more help at running back, because I don't like the idea of starting the season with Dexter McCluster and Sean Green as your top 2 running backs. So they definitely need a little help there. And as far as the defensive side of the ball, they've done a great job in amassing defensive ends just like the Jaguars. They need help on the inside, defensive tackle or 2, and they need a pass rusher, preferably at the linebacker position. and I would add one or two more cornerbacks to replace the departed Werner as well. We're going to move to the Houston Texans, who completely fell off the map last year after a season where, like the Atlanta Falcons, they were largely predicted to make the Super Bowl, and they finished the year with the worst record in the league in a year that saw Matt Schaub, who was never a great quarterback but always a suitable quarterback, completely lose everything that made him a consistent quarterback and threw an interception in basically every game he played, while the defense completely fell apart last year. Gary Kubiak suffered a stroke earlier in the season and was let go with a month remaining in the season, and now they welcome the former college head coach Bill O'Brien. This offseason, they let safety Danny Manning go. They let running back Ben Tate go to the Cleveland Browns. They lost nose tackle Earl Mitchell to the Miami Dolphins, defensive end Antonio Smith to the Oakland Raiders, and an offensive tackle Andrew Gardner to the Philadelphia Eagles. They also cut ties with longtime tight end Owen Daniels and traded Matt Schaub to the Oakland Raiders. They were able to sign a running back to replace Tate and Andre Brown, who, as I've said on the website, very underrated rusher when he was with the New York Giants. They also added a couple safeties, another Chris Clemens, this one a safety from the Miami Dolphins, Kendrick Lewis from the Kansas City Chiefs, and they brought in a veteran quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Obviously, they're going to be looking to address the quarterback situation. With the number 1 draft pick, it's a choice between a young quarterback or Jadeveon Clowney to solidify the front of that defense, whether he plays defensive end or linebacker. If they don't go Clowney, they're going quarterback. There is a possibility they grab Clowney early and try to take a quarterback early in the second round. Either way, those are two positions they have to address in this draft. J.J. Watt needs help along that front seven. I also really feel, in addition to the outside, they got to add in at least one or two nose tackles in that 3-4 defense they play. They need somebody up front. Right now, they don't have anyone starting at nose tackle for them. And they need help on the offensive line, which completely let Matt Schaub down over the course of last season. Lastly, we're going to move to the defending division champion Indianapolis Colts with the young quarterback Andrew Luck. They gave him a new toy to play with as they signed former Giant wide receiver Akeem Nicks on a very low-cost contract, 1 year, $5 million. They did lose all-pro safety Antoine Bethea to the San Francisco Giants. Running back Donald Brown went to the San Diego Chargers, and that's a show of confidence to Trent Richardson, who looked completely out of place after they acquired him for a first-round draft pick from the Cleveland Browns. They did re-sign Ahmad Bradshaw to back him up, but they need a complete turnaround season from Trent Richardson after he completely let them down last season. They did sign Phil Costa, the center formerly of the Dallas Cowboys, to compete at the center position, but he retired earlier this week, so center is still a need for them to protect Andrew Luck. And they lost another cornerback, Cassius Vaughn, to the Detroit Lions as well. The big signings they made on the defensive side of the football was the former defensive end of the Baltimore Ravens, Arthur Jones. And like I said earlier in the offseason, they were able to capitalize on the Cleveland Browns cutting ties with linebacker DeQuell Jackson, signing him to a 2-year deal. So going into the draft, they're set in terms of a weapons standpoint on offense, but they need help at the center position and at least 1 to 2 more options on the right side of the offensive line. They need help on the defensive line to go with Arthur Jones, probably a defensive tackle or two, and they need help at the safety position to replace Antoine Bethea. So, in summation, Jaguars definitely improved the most out of any team in this division. I still look at them as the bottom team in the division, going neck and neck with the Tennessee Titans. Houstoners have made some strides, but I still think they're a very talented bunch that just wound up having a really bad season. They're going to need a good draft, though, in Bill O'Brien's first year at the helm, and the Colts still are at the top of this division by a considerable margin. Check out everything else on This Is SportsZone. We got articles from Tom Lembo, Jay Orofsky, Jake Dixon, and the 2014 NFL Draft Preview. Latest installment is the offensive tackles. And we got Dave Tyson, George Murphy as well. And we may have something from Eric Tressler. Haven't heard from him in a while. Could be looking at the whole Donald Sterling situation in the NBA. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at WeAreSportsZone. As always, send us any questions and comments you may have. Thanks again for watching, folks. For This is SportsZone, I am Mike Aglialoro. We will see you next time, everybody.